Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Boston University School of Law. Welcome home to so many of you. I'm Dean Angela Nwachi-Willig, the Ryan Roth Gallo and Ernest J. Gallo Professor of Law, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this truly wonderful occasion, the unveiling of portraits of 3 of our history-making alumni from the United States First Circuit Court of Appeals, Judge Sandra Lynch, Judge Rosary Thompson, and the late Judge Juan Torrea. I am so incredibly proud to be here in this moment, not only because of the amazing accomplishments of our trailblazing alumni, but also because of what the path that led us to this moment tells us about our amazing community of students and future alumni at BU Law. So many of you have heard me say on prior occasions that one of the reasons I came to BU Law was my meeting with students during my on-campus interview. And during that particular session with students, I recall a wonderfully diverse group of students pushing me on a variety of issues that were of deep concern to them. Racism, belonging, harassment, a variety of issues. And ironically, what I loved about that session is that they did not cut me any slack. They questioned me deeply, they questioned me in hard ways, and they did not assume that I would see things their way simply because of my identity or my writings or my prior actions. And that told me 2 things about our wonderful student community. One, that they cared very deeply about BU Law. And 2, that they cared greatly about ensuring good community here. So I wasn't surprised the next fall after I'd arrived when I met with the Student Government Association officers for our first regular monthly meeting, and they brought up an issue that was of concern to them. They saw what they saw as a complete lack of diversity of the portraits on the walls in the room, this room, Barristers Hall. You see, years ago, the law school was very fortunate to receive an amazing donation of striking portraits taken by renowned photographer Yusef Karsh. And these portraits pictured the 9 Supreme Court justices who served on the Supreme Court from 1963 to 1965 under Chief Justice Earl Warren, which was prior to Justice Thurgood Marshall's appointment. The portraits were donated to the law school in 1987 to honor Dean William Schwartz and had been displayed prominently in the law school ever since, and in Barristers Hall since it was established. And the Student Government Association officers came into that first monthly meeting with me as good lawyers, well armed with their notes and their arguments. They finished all the business they predicted to be non-controversial during that meeting, and they left plenty of time to discuss the issue of the portraits on the wall. Led by a white male president and a Black woman vice president, the Student Government Association officers explained why it was critical that the representations of the people on the wall in the room where the law school held its most prominent events should reflect and look like their community. They then braced themselves for what they must have predicted to be resistance from me. And to their surprise, I simply said, I agree with you. After all, many years ago, when I was first starting my own law school journey, I sat alongside my classmates as my dean there welcomed us to the community during orientation. I have vivid memories of the dean declaring, "This is your law school," as I glanced around the room at a sea of white male faces on portraits on the wall behind my dean. And I recall then wondering if my dean recognized the irony of his words, and more so if he recognized how difficult it may have been for some of us to absorb those words, that this was our law school when no faces that looked like our own were on the wall. Unbeknownst to the students, when I arrived here, I entered Barristers Hall where I stand before you today, and I experienced a moment of deja vu. Encircling the room were those 9 beautiful portraits taken by Yusef Karsh. 9 portraits of white male justices staring back at me, the first person of color to serve as dean at BU Law. In fact, the first Black woman ever to lead a top 20 law school. And now, because of these students who cared so much about their community and their peer sense of belonging, we could move forward to enable a better reflection of our community in this room. So with the students in our community in mind, I asked for the portraits of the Warren Court to be taken down, and they needed to be reframed in any event. And I pledged that they would not be placed on the walls of barristers again until they hung alongside a set of portraits that better reflect the rich diversity of our BU Law community. And the diversity of our community truly is rich. In fact, I'm pleased to report that 45% of our 1L class this fall identify as people of color, the largest portion in our school's history. We then set out to commission portraits of our distinguished alumni on the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, Judge Juan Torreya from the class of 1957, Judge Sandra Lynch from the class of 1971, and Judge Ojeda Rosary Thompson from the class of 1976. As I noted before, each of these honorable judges is a history maker in their own right. Judge Torreya was the first Hispanic appointed to the court. Judge Lynch was the first woman appointed to the court and the first woman to serve as its chief judge. And Judge Thompson was the first African-American appointed to the court. Installing their portraits prominently in Barristers Hall honors their important contributions to law and society and complements the carched photographs of the Warren Court, which will be reinstalled very soon. Of course, this project has taken much longer than anticipated. Back then, we thought it might take just months or even a year. But due to a variety of circumstances, some of which you know well, the carched photographs have now been absent from our walls for 3 years. Originally noted White House photographer and BU alum Pete Souza planned to capture photographs of the three judges, but the pandemic caused us to postpone those efforts. Sadly, Judge Torreya passed away in October 2020 before we had a chance to resume the project with Pete Souza, so the photographs were no longer an option. And although we wish Judge Torreya was with us today, we are honored that several of his family members are here with us to celebrate his memory. Fortunately, Judge Lynch later introduced us to Timothy J. Clark, one of the most celebrated watercolor artists of his generation. And Mr. Clark generously agreed to paint portraits of Judge Lynch, Judge Thompson, and Judge Torreya. Mr. Clark's portraits and drawings are in the permanent collections of more than 20 museums and institutions, including the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery, the Museum of the City of New York City, and the Library of Congress. In 1987, Mr. Clark authored the book Focus on Watercolor in collaboration with the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Whitney Museum, both in New York City, which served as the basis of a 13-part PBS series by the same name, and which was written and hosted by Mr. Clark, and for which he received an Emmy nomination. Earlier this year, Howard University's Gallery of Art hosted a one-man show titled Family Reunion, Portraits by Timothy J. Clark, which included several new works created in particular for the exhibition at the historic HBCU. So I'm delighted that Timothy Clark and his wife, Mariette, are here with us today, and I invite Mr. Clark to the podium to say a few words.
Well, it is a good morning and a very special morning. I look around, I saw so many people making connections and talking and catching up. And there's an electricity in the air here this morning. And I'm proud to be a part of that. Now, I thank you very much for choosing me, Dean Onwuachi-Willig. But I've been a visual artist my entire life, not just my career. As a young person, I knew that's who I was and that's what I was going to be. So how does a visual artist attach to a law school? There seems to be we need a bridge, and visual is, you need a vision. And Dean Onwuachi-Willig had a vision how she was going to change things. And the law school reflects that vision. And you all do too. we joined today in the timeless celebration of how portraits honor individuals who rise from our community, but they also represent everyone in the community. For these unique works, I refined a personal technique that I've been working on for decades, but I changed it a little bit. I used oversized archival paper. The paper is durable as an oil painting foundation. I use pigments that are absolutely light fast. They won't fade even if they're in sunshine. Yet as permanent as this method is, poetically like the law, they remain both durable and delicate. We have to be careful, and that I use that to express the delicacy of what goes on within our community, because these are portraits of people who were groundbreaking. And as I began these portraits, I mean, I was fortunate because I painted the portrait of Judge Lynch for the Moakley Courthouse to celebrate the time that she was chief judge there. And so I had some foundation on it, but as I began to do new drawings, I had the vision of her youthful time in the serving as judge there, but I also could see my pencil tells me things. It's different than photography. I'm sorry to say that to the photographer there, but someone who has a pencil in their hand reveals things on paper if you've been trained to do this your whole life. And her commitment to the law and the Constitution came through, and I hope that we see that accented. What's interesting was it was one of the most challenging part was to paint Judge Torreya. And I talked to Judy Torreya and said, I'd like one of your sons to pose in the robe so I get a sense of the physical quality. And so I went there for the sitting, and his daughter was in the robes. And so I said, what's going on here? And she said, I think that she'll hold the spirit. And I did a series of drawings that I think came through. I do have to say that when we got back to California, I have, and I still have his robes, I'll return them to you. But I had to have a man pose in the robes because the figure wasn't quite right, but the attitude was. And there were things that we needed in Judge Lynch's portrait. Her commitment to the Constitution had me get a copy of the Constitution, and she posed with it in her hands, and to get the light right on it, to turn it so that the shapes revealed and echoed through what she did. When I painted her portrait for Moakley Courthouse, I used the architecture there to say how much she fit in there because she was the first woman. I wanted the architecture to also say, in the painting, to also say, she is part of the woodwork here. And in this one, I'd say the Constitution is part of her heart. With Judge Torreya, there were so many things that the pen that he held, he liked fountain pens. And so I had his daughter Judy holding a fountain pen. I couldn't get the light right. My attorney in California came over and said, let me hold it. And he posed for part of that. But also he wanted, we have a BU tie. So look at that. There's little symbols hidden all the way through here. You look at the BU tie. Do you know how hard it is to paint a BU logo on a necktie in a watercolor portrait? You have any idea at all? So when Judge Thompson was, I mean, we almost didn't get this done because of the pandemic, but when we finally got that sitting, it was just a great pleasure because she shared who she was immediately to me and my wife when we went to Providence and have her pose. But I have to tell you that she brings a style. She had a gavel that was important to her. She wanted that particular gavel because it had been a gift. Is that right? Right. And she had bling like you wouldn't believe. She has a set of earrings that were just as complex as the portrait. So when you look at that, be kind to me. Now, in order to get that right, I literally, not only did I use archival paper, archival pigments, but I also literally added 24 karat gold paint to parts of that. So when you look back and forth, you'll see them shine. And I suddenly thought, if I do that for Judge Thompson, what will the other two do? So I have gold on in all three portraits, if you look, and you can tell me where that is. And so if I could, you've been talking about these, my job is almost done, but if I could call Judge Thompson, Judge Lynch, and Judy Torreya up here, please, if you would. Would you like to see these things, or can we just keep talking? I'm talking about them, but, and while they're coming up here, before they reveal these, I have to say that portraiture is having a moment right now. And when I talk about vision, Judge Onwuachi Willig somehow, 2 years ago when she first spoke with me, she somehow knew that portrait would have its moment. Right now, Michelle Obama and President Obama's portraits were just revealed. One of them was painted by a good friend of mine. The Smithsonian just bought another one of my portraits for their collection. They checked, did it actually clear from the government? I'm asking my wife, and of the celebrated artist Faith Ringgold. So how you knew that this was perfectly in time tells us all that you are a great leader and with vision. And so the visual arts and the visual quality of law combined. So now my job is almost done, but before your job of pulling these down, it's all your job to look at this art. The Karsh portraits were of its time. We pray that these will be of their time and savor them. And so you know in your heart that the world is bigger and different and better. And thank you so much, all of you. One, two, and a three. Are you happy? Yeah, you gonna hug me or not? Can you hug me again? You're stunning. You're stunning. Thank you so much for playing. Thank you all. Good. Good.
I would like to invite beautiful, stunning portraits to invite Judge Sandra Lynch to say a few words.
Dean Angela, my friend, thank you for all of this. This is just another demonstration of how inspirational, farsighted, and insightful a leader you have been and will be for this law school. Tim Clark, you are an artist of international acclaim for good reason. What you didn't mention is Tim's work is presently on display at the Hispanic Society in New York City, alongside old masters. And for Tim to do portraits for my law school, and also to have done portraits for Howard University, I think is quite a tribute to the school and to Tim and to the dean. Tim talked about how portraits reveal. Tim's portraits reveal truth, they reveal character, not just likenesses. And in doing so, he employs all of the disciplines of art and the history of art. We judges write opinions. We try to adhere to the truth, to the principles of the Constitution, and to adhere to the disciplines, of which there are many, of the law. We try where we can to be compassionate and to understand human nature. Mostly, we are known and we will be remembered for the opinions that we write. It is a singular honor, Dean, that we will be remembered for these portraits as well. But that isn't the important point. The important point is, as your students told you at that first meeting, that these portraits show that there has been a growth for the better in the law, in the judiciary, in access to justice, and in many ways in adhering to the principles of equality and justice for all that are embodied in the Constitution. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for those beautiful words. And Judge Thompson, I'd love to invite you to come up.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this, but Dean Owachi Willie, Tim, my colleague, Judge Lynch, I am so honored to be here with you today. You know, when we got here, the education school was still upstairs, and everybody was jockeying for the elevators. And the first thing the dean said to us, first day of orientation, was, "You guys have got to learn how to use the stairway." So when I left BU, not only did I have a very good education, I had some beautiful and strong legs. I can't help but seeing these portraits. I just can't even look at them without crying. But, when I got to BU, there wasn't a lot of diversity. There were like 8 Black students in my class, which was down from the year before. And I remember that we were at a Balsa assembly, and I don't remember why this one professor was there, but there were some professors there at this assembly, and one was said to us, welcome, it's nice to see some diversity. We want to be here to support you, to encourage you. And the next professor who got up there said, as I look around the room, all I can say is that none of you should be here because none of you are qualified to be here. And our jaws dropped. And it's like, what's going on here? He said, "You're not qualified because now all of the students that we used to accept are being accepted by Harvard, and all of the students that Suffolk used to accept are being accepted by BU. And personally, I don't think any of you should be here." And I think our hearts sank that day because we were looking around and we were like second and third year law students. And we said, well, we know a whole bunch of our classmates didn't make it after first year, but we're still here and we're still strong. And we use those words to, as Judge Katenji said, to persevere. And I hope that having these diverse portraits on the walls of this law school help these current students who are here understand that this school is a school for them, is a place for them, and they too can go forth and do good things for the world. So thank you so much for doing this for us.
Oh, wow. You make me cry. Thank you all for beautiful words. Peter Levitt from the class of 1993, one of Judge Torea's former law clerks, will say a few words on behalf of Judge.
Hi, good morning. I want to thank the Dean for hosting this wonderful event. You're a terrific ambassador for this institution. Thank you. Judge Torea is one of those rare individuals who brings passion and vigor to everything he does. Whether it's the time with his family, his relationships with colleagues, clerks, painting, sailing, and of course his work. Judge Torea cared deeply about his work. I was lucky enough to have seen him quite a bit over the last 30 years. I married a woman that I met in Puerto Rico when I was clerking for the judge. And so one of the benefits of that was we would return to Puerto Rico frequently and spend time with the judge and Judy. And whenever I'd see the judge, he'd always say, "Peter, I'm working on this great opinion. I can't tell you anything about it, but it's really great. It's really important. Keep an eye out for it." And so I'd keep an eye out for it. Judge Lynch and Judge Thompson may not be surprised to hear that it was frequently a dissent when it came out. He loved his dissents. But I was always struck by how passionate he remained after all those years. He loved his work. But so he worked hard, but he also played hard. And he played hard with his law clerks. We were part of his family. So 10 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, he'd been in the office working for hours, and he'd come in to where the clerk sat and said, "Who wants to go for coffee?" Of course, we'd say, "Sure." And we'd go out for coffee. And during those coffee breaks, he would tell us stories about things he was working on, things he'd done, and ask us about our lives. And then once every couple of weeks, he'd come in at 3 o'clock. "Who wants to go for ice cream?" And we'd go for ice cream. On one of those walks in Old San Juan, Judy, I hope you don't mind me telling this story. We're walking down the cobbled streets, and a handgun falls out of his pants, lands on the sidewalk. An older woman looks up at him and goes like this. He picks it up and puts it in his pants, and then for the next 10 minutes, he and this older woman are laughing and joking together. In Spanish, I don't know what they were saying, but they were having a great time. Judge Torea was like that with everybody he met. You know, they say that you can tell a lot about a person's character by how they treat people who can't do anything for them. And that was Judge Torea. You know, whether it was presidents of the United States, and he met a lot of them, or the people who cleaned his office, he treated them all the same. And those are the kind of lessons that he imparted on his law clerks, like me, and really everybody that he came into contact with. One of the great events I participated in him when I was clerking was on a Sunday afternoon. He had us all come out and go sailing with him. And the law clerks were all wondering, okay, what do you wear to go sailing with a federal judge on a Sunday afternoon? So we've got our khakis and our polo shirts, and we show up on his boat, which was quite large. I'm not a boat person, but I think seemed like it was like 40 feet. 60, okay, thanks, Judy. And he's there, he's soaking wet because he just jumped in the water. He's got his bathing suit and his flip-flops and a t-shirt. And we go out and we go around the bay, and he takes out, I think it was a ukulele, and sits down and starts playing and said, "Any requests?" And so I requested my favorite song, "This Land Is Your Land" by Woody Guthrie. And so he played it. And himself and his 3 law clerks were sailing through San Juan Harbor singing "This Land Is Your Land." Every other year, we'd have a jamboree at the Torreya's house in Duxbury, and law clerks would come from all over the world with their children to spend time with the judge and his family. Jay would be working the grill. Hamburgers and hot dogs, nothing fancy. Everything that the judge did was unpretentious, inclusive. He was a great, great man. I'm really happy to see so many of his law clerks here today. The judge loved his law clerks. He treated them like family. And the thing I can say with certainty is I've never heard any of his law clerks ever say a negative thing about him. Who doesn't ever have something negative to say about the boss, right? But not Judge Torreya. So very happy that his portrait will hang here. It's beautiful, Tim. Thank you. And thank you all for coming.
Wow. So thank you. You can see how amazing our amazing alumni, history-making judges are. And I hope that you get a chance to come up close and see these portraits. And please join us for the reception.
One more brief speaker, is that correct? I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's my fault.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, Michael. Michael Torreya, a graduate of BU Law and Judge Torreya's grandson. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning still, everybody. I'm Mike Torella. I'm a graduate of 2018, and most importantly, I'm the judge's grandson. I'm going to refer to him as my grandfather and not the judge, because he was my grandfather to me, and then the judge second. First, I would like to say thank you so much to BU Law for everything. Commissioning this portrait is great. It's even better that it's in Barrister's Hall and not directly across from the library, where I would come out and see his eyes looking at me at 10 p.m. at night, especially when I was studying for the bar exam. And I would like to say thank you to Tim Clark. We spoke a little bit on the phone when BU was first getting the portraits together, and it's really great to see such a great painting of him hanging here. Most importantly, I would like to say thank you to my grandfather. Without him, I wouldn't be a lawyer today. I wouldn't be here talking. I would probably be somewhere else. I don't know, living in Boston maybe still. But he guided me a lot as when I was in law school, and I would complain about contracts law, complain about what the heck is consideration. I don't know what's happening. And he'd say, just sit down, think about it clearer, don't panic. And he was always kind of like a good, solid figure to ask questions to. I never felt, once in a while I felt scared, but I never felt, I never felt panicked to ask him. I always felt, okay, either I'm wrong or I'm right. Most of the time I was wrong, but it was still a good guiding light to have as a grandfather. His career was a remarkable one. He was in private practice until 1974, after graduating from the law school in 1975. He was on the district court in Puerto Rico until 1984, where he started as chief judge, and then was U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit. Sorry, I skipped over a few words. A little nervous. I'm a regulatory attorney, not a litigator, so I'm not big on public speaking. But he was, on the First Circuit here in Boston until he died in 2020. But he was somebody where he was chief judge as well. But just somebody that I loved a lot. And I really wish he was here to be speaking and not me. But I'm very honored to see his portrait hanging today, and I'm honored that the institution that he loved will continue his legacy. And thank you again to BU and Timothy Clark for painting everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you. Beautiful. All right. Now we will head off to our reception. Thank you so much, and I hope you get a chance to come up close and see the portraits. Thank you for coming.